I wanted to make this video because it's an interesting subject and I should bring it up. So, recently, a Jew asked me, what do Augustinians think of Jews? And in this context, I'm not talking about the Augustinian order within Catholicism, I'm talking about the philosophy in general. Any Lutheran, Anglican, Calvinist, or Catholic can be an Augustinian, like what I am. The Augustinian view on Jews is that Jews should be allowed to survive, but not thrive, unless the condition is that they become Christian. So we don't have a history of racial anti-Semitism. In fact, we usually denounce it. We're not Nazis. We denounce murdering Jews. We denounce hating the Hebrew race. So we're not Hebrew haters. We tend to make the distinction between Hebrews as an ethnic group and Jews as a religion. That's how we function. So how we view Jews can be summed up by Alexander of Milan. He was a Hebrew Christian from, I think, the 11 to 1200s who had a very Augustinian mindset. He was a Hebrew who converted to Christianity from Judaism who lived in Milan. And he said this: Christ was not sent to the Jews, but to the Hebrews. He was sent to his sheep, the followers who became Christian. This is not an exact quote, this is a paraphrasing. So, in Christianity, especially in Augustinian Christianity, we tend to believe that Christianity is a continuation of Judaism. That Christianity is not an offshoot of Judaism, but rather Judaism is a perversion of Christianity. But we also believe that Christians are an amalgamation of Hebrews and Gentiles. So we view Israel not as the state around Israel. We're not Zionist, traditionally. Some Augustinians are, but we're generally not Zionist. We believe in covenant theology, usually. Especially Calvinist Augustinians. But generally, we're more on the belief that what applies to Israel morally and covenantally applies to Christians, be they Hebrew or Gentile, but that the old rituals have been replaced by the new rituals. There's a debate if the old covenant is a merit system of salvation or a faith system of salvation. I generally lean that's a faith system because of the executions of animal sacrifices done for the remissions of their sins, represented as a forerunner for Christ. But generally, that faith is what saved them. As we write in the book of Hebrews, we as in the Christians, say that we're justified by faith. Or that Abraham was justified by faith. So, when we view Jews, we view them as a apostasy that comes from the Talmudic religion these days. But before the Talmud rabbis became about, they were just a Pharisee party. The Pharisees are, what's the word? The forerunners to modern Judaism. And it's not a conspiracy theory, it's their own admission that the Pharisees became the Talmudic sect. Generally, though, we would say that Judaism is an apostasy religion. Therefore, we would say that they don't see the Trinity in the Old Testament, such as Isaiah 46:15, Malachi 3:1. And we view these verses as Trinitarian. And we do acknowledge one essence of divinity, who are in three persons. A lot of Augustinians don't like the word substance, as that is a term of parts. But we would say that one God is a divine, what I call as the divine laws of physics, or the divine God what is, and not the three persons who. The personified who's would be Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Since the Jews reject the Trinity, we tend to say that they're not truly Jews, but the true Jews are Hebrew Christians. As Paul says, the Jews have been cut off from the branch of Israel, and that the Gentiles who have become Christian, and that's a paraphrasing, have been grafted on. This is in the book of Romans, I think, chapter 11. So, we generally view Jews as a religion negatively, while we view Hebrews as an ethnicity positively. So while we would say, in a sense, that Jesus is Jewish, he says so himself talking to the Samaritan lady at the well, we generally traditionally believe that that we would use the term Hebrew for a positive ethnic connotation. So how we view Jews is we don't want Jews to thrive because we think their religion has merit punishment from God, but we believe that Jews should be allowed to thrive when they become Christian. That a Hebrew is an alright thing. So we're not anti-Semites, because anti-Semitism is the connotation of we want to murder every Jew we see because of their blood. That's like Nazism, and we're not Nazis. We would be more akin to um, 3rd century Christian Jewish relationships of segregation and indifference. We're not Spanish Inquisition, as we have not traditionally supported it, so we don't go around saying convert or die. We just simply have more of a view of Jews in a sense of a dimny system. So I wanted to make this video. This is in response to a Instagram Jewish woman I met who was curious on how we view Jewish people. So are we Zionist? The answer is no, unless the Jews become Christian. Then I guess we would be. Being a Christian myself, I believe that Muslims are descendants of Hebrews, or not Muslims, but Palestinians are descendants of Hebrews who became Christian. So in 1012 to 1014 AD, all the Christians in Palestine were told to convert or be punished, and they did. And in Christianity, in Acts chapter 2, says 5,000 Jews became Christian, and that's not considering later Jewish conversions. And Samaritans are Hebrews, but they're not Jews. So generally what we say is, how do we view Palestinian Muslims might be the same thing, but I don't know. I don't know if Augustinians have the view that since Jews are Hebrews but not Christians, if Muslim Palestinians are in this category. But generally the view is to make Jews a second-class citizen. What we're against is murdering Jews, imprisoning them for their faith, so on. What we're for is generally keeping them from politics, keeping them from corporations. They can still run like small businesses. Make sure that they have food. We don't enslave them. As I say, survive, not thrive. And essentially make them second-class citizens. The Dimny system. So that's how Augustinians usually view Jews, is we don't like their religion, but we don't have a problem with their ethnic group. For example, I have a lot of Hebrew friends who are Christian. I'm friends with on Instagram, like with a young Anglican who's a Hebrew Christian, so he can thrive under our system. That's how Augustinians would view it. So we're not Philo-Semites. Philo-Semites means lover of Jews, but we're not anti-Semites, which means hater of Jews. We are Allo-Semites, or the in-between of Jews. We're Allo-Semites. We're not anti-Semitic, we're not Philo-Semitic. We are Allo-Semitic, which Jews would say is too anti-Semitic for them, but it's how we view Jews. For example, when a Catholic debated or interviewed Ben Shapiro asked the question, "Am I saved?" And the Catholic guy was stuttering, but the Christian Augustinian would say, "No, he's going to hell unless he becomes Christian." Jews are not going to hell on merits of being Jewish, but on merits of not being a Christian. In some sense, you can be a Jew and a Christian, but we don't really like that language. We kind of agree with the rabbis of Judaism that you can't be Jewish and Christian. We call that Judaizers, which is a heresy in the book of Galatians. What we would say is that, and we don't have a problem with ethnic Hebrews practicing Jewish customs. We have a problem with Gentiles practicing Jewish customs. But I was going to say, you can't really be Jewish in a religious sense and a Christian. Now, you can say you can be Judean, or Hebraic, or Israelitic, or Judahite. You can use these ethnic labels. You can definitely be a Jew and a Christian, but you can't be a Jew by faith and a Christian, because Jews are often a meritocratic religion and Unitarian. Now, there are exceptions. For example, the Alexandrian Jews predating Christ first century BC to first century AD, really as early as second century BC to second century AD. In Egypt, Jews were semi-Trinitarian. Now, their Trinitarian was more Semi-Arianism. They definitely believe in the Logos. They believed in as a person. They believe in the Spirit as a person, and they believe in a Yahweh as a person. Um, Alexandrian Judaism, which is extinct because they all became Christian by the second century AD. They weren't true Trinitarians. They were semi-Arian, Arian, not Aryan. They weren't Nazis, obviously. They were Egyptian brown, and they were Jewish. But the Alexandrian Jews believed in that God, the Father, what we call the Father, they believe that He created the second and third person of the Trinity through His essence, and that He can grant their divinity or strip their divinity. That's semi-Arianism. We don't believe that. We believe that all three persons are self-existing. We believe that all three persons are fully God and they cannot strip divinity from each other, and they're uncreated. Each of the three persons uncreated. So the Alexandrian Judaism is dead. But I mean, Arius, and this is my theory, I think Arius gets his theology off of Philo of Alexandria. Philo of Alexandria is 30 BC to 50 AD, I think. And he was definitely a proto-Trinitarian, though he kind of fall into the subordinationist heresy of semi-Arianism. Not as far as Arius himself, who was an Egyptian by ethnicity and Christian by faith. He outright said there was a time when the sun was not. Which is heresy to us, because Hebrews 1 to 8 to 12, of the Son, the Father says, "Your throne, O God, is forever." This actually parallels Psalms, where a Levite actually says the same thing about God. So Peter, who wrote the book of Hebrews, a lot of people think Paul wrote the book of Hebrews, but the salutations is lacking. We know what the Pauline salutations look like, and we know what the Petrine salutations look like. And so this follows more of a Petrine route. Peter, who was appointed as first amongst equals, not the supremacy amongst the the first. I'm not Catholic. Peter actually would be. There's a joke. How can a Jew be an anti-Semite? And the answer is go ask Peter, because Peter was it was not friendly towards Judaism after they killed Christ alongside the Romans. And I usually blame the Romans for killing Christ. But you could blame the faction of the Pharisees for the same thing. So we definitely hold, Augustinians definitely hold to the accusation of the doctrine of deicide. The doctrine of the deicide is the belief that we can accuse Jews of murdering Christ. Though we partially hold to it, we mostly accuse the Pharisees, not Jews in general. The doctrine of deicide is there are two doctrines of deicide. One where you blame the Romans, like John, and one where you blame the Jews, like Peter and Paul. I hold to a partial doctrine of deicide, where we can just blame the Roman government and the Pharisees as Christ killers. I wouldn't look at a modern-day Jewish girl or Jewish boy and say you killed Christ. I wouldn't even say they killed the apostles. They're 2,000 years far away. I would just say they're a continuation of an apostasy, though. So this video, I hope, clarifies how Augustinians view Jews. We don't hate Hebrews as an ethnic group. Some of us are Hebrew. I'm not. I'm a Gentile. I might have some Hebrew ancestry 4 centuries ago. The DNA is not there, though, because DNA is 200 years, not 400 years. So it might not be there. I might not have Hebrew ancestry. But they were Christian. So we would say they're favorable. That's it. I hope you guys have a good day. I hope this clarifies what Augustinians, who hold to philosophy, and presumably the actual Augustinian order in Catholicism, view the Hebrew people. We generally love the Hebrew people, but we're not Zionists because we don't like the Jewish religion. We would say that they don't have a state until they become Christian. That's how we roll. Have a good day, guys. God bless you in the name of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.